Okay, well, regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms. Cam and Company name is Cam Edwards. This will be the last Bearing Arms Cam and Company for the week. We'll be back on Monday. We will have fresh content on the website at bearingarms.com throughout the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, but we will not be doing a show on Thursday and on Friday. I will likely be in a turkey-induced coma. Today, we are going to talk more about Second Amendment sanctuaries. Mark Walters from Armed America Radio is going to be with us in just a minute, as is Tonya Freeman, who's a resident of Wythe County, Virginia, one of at least 3 counties in Virginia that approved Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions on Tuesday. I say at least 3. I'm trying to keep track of this, as is the Virginia Citizens Defense League. Their website, as of Tuesday morning, had 15 counties that had adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. Now their website lists 20. So I was aware of 3 votes yesterday, but there might have been 2 more votes as well. This thing is really, I mean, again, it's taking off like nothing I have ever seen in 15 years of covering the Second Amendment. And it's taken off not just in Virginia, but around the country as well. There was another county in Texas that approved a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution on Tuesday. I think another one in Florida that approved a resolution on Tuesday. It's absolutely amazing. So let me just run down the list of counties. According to the VCDL, as of Wednesday, November 27th, these are the counties that have adopted Second Amendment sanctuary county resolutions in Virginia. Appomattox County, which is right next to Prince Edward County, where Farmville, Virginia is located. Botetourt County, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've lived here for, 15 years, and I'm still not sure about Botetourt County. Campbell County, which is out near Lynchburg. Carroll County in the southwestern part of the state. Charlotte County in the south central part of the state. Dickinson County out west as well. Dinwiddie County in the central part of the state. Giles County. Henry County in the southern part of the state. That was one of the votes last night. King William County. Lee County. Madison County. Nottoway County. Patrick County. Pittsylvania County. Powhatan County, that was I think a late addition as well. I hadn't even heard about Powhatan County. That's one of the Richmond exurbs. Southampton, Sussex, Washington, and Wythe County. Now, Wythe County's vote was yesterday. Tonya Freeman, resident in Wythe County, joined me for a brief phone conversation earlier today talking about that meeting where there were hundreds of folks. Again, like we've seen in so many of these meetings around the state, these supervisors meetings, it's so jammed that not only does the meeting room get full, but the crowd spills outside of the building itself. And that was the scene in Wythe County, Virginia yesterday. Tonya Freeman's husband was there, and like many, ended up rearranging their schedule, taking time off of work to be there at a Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. county supervisors meeting to show their support for the Second Amendment.
And it was a good mixture of folks, professionals. You saw all walks of life.
Yeah, I mean,
out there yesterday. My husband was there. He had to rearrange his schedule to go, but was glad to do it. And I think overall, it's just a group of people who feel like we are no longer heard in Virginia. Here in Wythe County, we have taken a stand. I know this, on school resource officers. We have an armed officer in every school. And that should give people a better picture of who we are and how we feel about safety. I'd like to see the legislature concentrate on school safety measures and funding for that rather than disarming citizens.
So I appreciate Tonya talking to me today. I also appreciate Mark Walters from Armed America Radio, who joined me for a beefy conversation about the Second Amendment sanctuary movement, not only in Virginia, but again, from coast to coast right now, Rhode Island to Washington State, Florida to Idaho and Arizona. I mean, it's amazing, again, how quickly and how broad this movement is taking shape. Mark, it is so good talking with you, man. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, Cam, thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to doing this with you for a long time. It's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure, my friend. It's all mine.
I feel exactly the same. You do a great job with Armed American Radio. How many stations are you on now these days?
God, over 225, pushing 250. You know, that fluctuates every week or two when you get a report somebody adds. You know, a station goes dark, but in that vicinity and growing like a weed, man, now in our 11th year.
That is fantastic. I'm curious, has the Second Amendment sanctuary movement, has that become a pretty big topic of conversation there in your program?
Yeah, it has. It has to, and particularly, well, you know, being where you are, you know, this is going to be a topic moving forward as we go. Well, you look at what happened in New Mexico, Colorado, Washington State, now Virginia, which is, you know, the rest of the country is watching the birth of New Jersey-style gun control from scratch in what was a conservative state, and a state I considered home for many years. You know, I don't know if you know this, but I graduated college in Radford University. I lived in Richmond, skied the James River as a kid. I lived in Virginia Beach. I have family up in Northern Virginia, so Virginia and me go way back. And I am really sad to see what's happening to my home state of Virginia.
You know, I got to tell you, I mean, so I'm not a native Virginian. I moved here in 2004, one of the many who have moved into the Northern Virginia area and lasted about 8 years there before my wife and I decided, okay, we can't take this. And we moved to, quote unquote, real Virginia. I know exactly where Radford is. But you're right. You know, it's been 26 years since Democrats had complete control of the legislature and the executive in the state of Virginia. It's been about that long since we've had any gun control laws passed. So we've had an entire generation grow up in this state, not to mention the, you know, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands who have moved to this state, who just sort of, I think, in many ways took it for granted that Virginia was different than Maryland. Virginia was different than Delaware. Virginia was a pro-gun state. Then we had this election. Michael Bloomberg spending $3.5 million targeting suburban swing districts, eked out enough wins over on the Senate side, did a pretty good job in the House of Delegates side with the suburban moms. And now, as you say, they're not nibbling around the edges. I mean, they are introducing legislation that would strip parents of their authority to decide when their children are responsible enough to handle firearms. You've got a sweeping semi-auto ban that does not have any sort of grandfather clause contained within it. And this, by the way, is not some sort of fringe piece of legislation. It's been introduced by the Senate Majority Leader, the incoming Senate Majority Leader. So it's got the backing of a lot of Democrats already. And you're right. I think if gun owners are not paying attention to what's going on in Virginia, they need to, because, you know, when our session starts in January, I think the next 2 months, it's going to be an absolutely critical time, not only for gun owners in the state, but you're going to see what gun owners want to do wherever you live, because, you know, the Virginia game plan, I think, is the model that they're working on right now.
It absolutely 100% is. I go back to, I commented the other day, it's like the birth of a nation. We get to sit back and we get to watch what the Democrats, who now take total control in Virginia, have in store for the rest of us. They're going to use Virginia as the petri dish, and we get to see it in real life. You know, California's gun control laws have been building and growing over decades. Illinois, same thing under Mayor Daley and the rest of those clowns. New York, we see that under Cuomo. New Jersey, we've seen it for years. But Virginia, this is fresh. This is brand new. DCDL's been very effective. Virginia's been very pro-gun for decades, for those last 26 years, as you just mentioned. And now we get to see what happens when we lose those reins of power. And it's not going to be pretty. You know, it's interesting. The Democrats that you talked about that didn't have control for 26 years, let's go back to those 26 years, Cam. That was a whole different breed of Democrat back then, too.
Oh, yeah.
Was not today's socialists. You had some blue dogs in there, some conservative Democrats in the state of Virginia that would have never governed the state the way they're doing it today. So we get to watch this unfold across the country. And as much I know we have a lot of listeners in Virginia, and God that I'm saying this, but not enough of you voted. And I think you nailed it. I think too many people in Virginia there's been so many generations that never thought this could happen. And look what happened. It did. And the rest of us are now sitting back and watching. And I quote Alan Gottlieb, who was a guest on my program just 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about Remington having to go through the case up in Connecticut, and that they will eventually prevail. But until they do, they're going to have to go through the meat grinder. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're fixing to see in Virginia, is Virginia residents have to go through that meat grinder, man. It ain't going to be pretty.
No, it's not. And you know, I mean, we have seen, I think we're now up to 18 Second Amendment sanctuary counties. 3 more voted in favor yesterday. And, you know, we're also starting to see, Mark, some county sheriffs step up. because the county supervisors in Virginia, they don't tell the sheriff what to do. They can pass these resolutions saying we don't want to spend any county money enforcing unconstitutional gun laws. But to see now sheriffs, and the sheriff in Amelia County, I think there was a sheriff in Henry County as well, coming out and specifically saying, listen, I'm not confiscating anybody's firearms. If an order comes out under Senate Bill 16, if that becomes law and people are not allowed to possess these firearms anymore, I'm not going to be the one to come and take them away. And I think it's great to see more and more of these elected sheriffs stand up as well and say, they can pass what they want in Richmond, but I get to decide what laws are going to be a priority. I get to decide what laws I'm going to enforce, just like the DA in San Francisco, newly elected, saying that he's not going to prosecute public urination, prostitution, and some other crimes. Right. Well, what is any different about a county sheriff saying, well, I'm not going to prosecute, I'm not going to arrest anybody for having a 20-round magazine or for continuing to possess their AR-15?
It's interesting. A couple things are in play with this conversation. First of all, it's great to see those county sheriffs step up. When you look at an electoral map of the counties of the state of Virginia, you see a bright red state, man. Even after this most recent election, you see a bright red state. If you didn't know what the population centers were and you weren't tuned in or plugged in like you are or listeners are, you would think there's no way that state's blue. Certainly not both houses of the assembly and the governor's mansion, maybe one, maybe even two, but certainly not all three. You wouldn't even know that, all right? Yep. But the rest of the rural counties in Virginia now are stepping up to the plate saying, look, and I was really encouraged. I saw a quote from a 25-year-old kid in Amelia County who was at that hearing a couple days ago. You may have seen it, where he said, we don't want your Northern Virginia way of life imposing on our way of life here. That 25 years old, that's encouraging to see that younger generation step up and say, don't tread on me. That's basically what he was saying. But, those gun control laws are going to pass in Virginia. The litany of them is going to pass. I'm not convinced that an assault weapons ban will, quote unquote, using their phraseology, Cam, only because I think they might be looking forward. The U.S. Congress, U.S. House of Representatives couldn't get it passed. So I don't know that Virginia is going to be able to do that. However, it's closer than it's ever been. But let's take a look. Let's jump to Connecticut. Remember when Connecticut, shortly after Newtown went crazy and New York went crazy? Those states are unable to enforce those laws. They're not going to jail 1.5 million of their residents. They throw these laws out as good measure, but then they don't do a darn thing about it. And I have a feeling what you're going to see in Virginia is a lot of posturing. And with these sheriffs stepping up to the plate like that is no doubt putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the assembly and the governor himself, who is going to sign the bills and then use the media to kind of blame these sheriffs as being extremists. While the sheriffs, what most people don't realize, and this is what shows like this are so important for, most people don't realize that the sheriff is the oldest elected office in the country. The sheriff's the most powerful man in the county, man. Nobody can get past him, not even the feds. And most people don't understand that. So really, really good to see them step up. And if Virginia does it, I think you're going to see a lot of, okay, you did it. Now we dare you to enforce it. I don't think it's going to happen.
I suspect that you're right. You bring up Connecticut, and we've also seen this in New York with the passage of the SAFE Act, right? The non-compliance rate for registering your so-called assault weapons, the non-compliance rate for re-registering your firearms. I mean, last time I checked, and this was earlier this year, they're estimated to be about 100,000 New Yorkers that had not re-registered their previously registered handguns, which meant that they were now technically breaking the law. The state of New York, knows based on their previous registrations a fairly good idea of where these folks might be. But Governor Cuomo, he's not perhaps the most politically savvy politician out there, but he's savvy enough to know that if he were to order the state police to go out and to start, rounding up these handguns from otherwise legal gun owners, even in New York, that would be political suicide.
Yeah, it'd be a disaster. And in Virginia in particular, what concerns me about Virginia is a couple things. I think a lot of people, I hate to use this term, but we'll throw it right back in their face. A lot of gun owners in Virginia are now woke. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're awakened to the fact of, holy crap, look what happened. I never thought I would see this in my Virginia. The Albemarle County voter, the Roanoke County voter, those that live in Salem and rural areas out down in the southwest part of the state where I went to school, those people never saw this coming. They never thought it would happen. And we tried to get them to the polls. We tried to muster everybody up. Well, that voter is now wide awake. And while they might not have, because I do believe this, I believe what I'm saying is true. I may be wrong. Maybe you can correct me. But I believe if every gun owner went to the polls in Virginia and voted their guns, I don't think we'd be in the situation of Virginia today. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's interesting because, in the more rural parts of the state, you actually saw pro-gun candidates win by continued wide margins. The problem was not in the rural areas. The problem really was in those suburban districts. And you're right. I think if folks in places like, Powhatan, Chesterfield had shown up in those great numbers. And I think too, Mark, I think part of it was what the politicians themselves said. State Senator Amanda Chase, a staunch Second Amendment supporter, she won her reelection handily in a suburban Richmond district. In fact, she was out at that meeting in Amelia County the other night and I had a chance to talk with her about it. Meanwhile, you had a couple of her colleagues who were generally good on firearms, but all of a sudden they started talking about their support for red flag laws and they started kind of waffling on their support for the Second Amendment. And they were the ones that ended up losing by 1 or 2 percentage points. So, part of it was the gun owners didn't show up, but part of it was some of these candidates didn't give gun owners a good reason to go out and show their support for them. And so I think one of the lessons that I hope that pro-gun politicians learn in Virginia is that you can't water down your support for the Second Amendment and expect that gun owners are going to support you just as enthusiastically as they would have. Some of them are going to stay home if they don't believe that you're going to stand up for their rights.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you got to wear that on your sleeve, your support for the Second Amendment. You got to get out there and you got to run on it. And we've found that over the years, Cam, that if you run on it, generally speaking, you win. Now, you talk about some of those areas. I lived in those areas of Midlothian, and you get up into some of those areas outside Richmond, those northern suburbs, and Wythe County. Is there a demographic shift there? Yeah, there is a demographic shift there. No doubt about it. Northern Virginia is always going to be what it is. But to see the blue pocket in Northern Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, the Tidewater area, Newport News, Norfolk area right there, and just see that and then look at that map of Virginia, it's really disheartening, quite frankly. And I don't want to see that happen to the country. I don't want to see that because we're going to watch it occur in Virginia, and I want people to be awake. I want them to focus on Virginia. Look at what these people are doing now that we've given them the reins of power. And then when you look at that map, did Virginia really give them the reins of power, or did 3 or 4 counties give them the reins of power? That's what's frustrating a lot of Virginians today, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you one other thing that I know I'm certainly going to be doing, I hope that other gun owners are doing this as well, is we've got to take our message out of rural Virginia. I was talking with the head of the Petersburg, Virginia GOP. And I'm going to be speaking there in Petersburg, which is a majority minority city. It is south of Richmond. Right. It is a pretty urban area. And I'm going to be speaking there in early January, and I'm going to be talking about the effect that these gun control laws are going to have in urban areas. Because I think that there is there's a lot of common ground to be found, even if it's not on other issues. I think there's a lot of common ground to be found among rural Virginians and people who live in the inner city, because frankly, I think they're going to be facing a disproportionate impact of these gun control laws. And again, we're talking about putting people in prison for nonviolent possessory offenses, while at the same time, these same politicians are calling themselves criminal justice reform champions. So I want to be able to point out that, hey, listen, they're talking the talk when it comes to things like, legalizing cannabis, expunging low-level drug crimes. But if they want to put you in prison simply for possessing a firearm without a license or for possessing a 20-round magazine, guess what? That's not criminal justice reform. And there are viable reasons for even people who live in high-crime neighborhoods to look in another direction rather than gun control in terms of making their communities a safer place. We need to give them those options. We need to tell them what those other ideas are, and we need to explain to them and show them why these gun control laws are going to hurt their communities more than help them.
And let's just throw this 800-pound gorilla out there. They're going to witness the racist gun control laws. There's racism rooted in gun control, and they're going to see urban minority communities suffer the most under these gun control laws. We've watched it for decades in cities like Chicago. Pick a Democrat-controlled city where urban minorities have been forced from gun ownership, and crime is at disproportionate numbers. The racist roots of gun control are on display from the origin. I mean, look, I'm down here in Virginia, and it was SB 386, I believe. I may have the number wrong. We've passed so many good bills down here lately over the years. But we wiped out the 140-year-old public gathering law in the state of Virginia. You couldn't carry a gun at a public gathering. It was a 140-year-old Jim Crow law that was designed to keep recently freed black Americans during Reconstruction, disarmed. And no one knew what that was. Anybody who was a McDonald's parking lot, a public gathering, it was whatever law enforcement wanted it to be. And that's the way it was designed to be 150 years ago. Okay? So the racist roots of gun control are going to be on full display in the urban communities. And I hope people are paying attention to that. I really, truly hope they are.
I do. And I hope that, again, I want to see that outreach between rural Virginia and suburban and urban Virginia, because there are allies to be found in all parts of the state. And one of the things that I'm a little concerned about is I don't just want us to be talking to ourselves. If we do that, clearly that's not enough, right, to get us a legislative majority right now if we only talk to ourselves. So we have to be engaged in outreach as well.
And I think the sanctuary city that you're seeing, the explosion in sanctuary cities is going to be, that's going to wake more people up. I think it's going to wake up some of the voters in some of those urban districts and some of those suburban districts. What I don't want to see happen, what I hate, I guess I kind of say I fear it, is if it becomes standoffish in some of those rural communities where it becomes, it's you or me, because we as gun owners have got to fix this. We're the only ones that can fix this, Cam. We've got to be the ones to stand up and say, hey, we've got to educate these people in the urban areas. And sitting here at the standoff when you're only talking to yourself like that is not going to work. Not in Virginia today when the election went the way it went. We've got to regain those seats. We've got to regain the governor's mansion in Virginia. We're not going to do it by fighting. There's got to be outreach in those cities. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it has to happen.
Yeah, and I think that it will. I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I said, I'm going to be doing my part. I know that VCDL and Virginia Shooting Sports Association, they're well aware of this as well. And I think that, it's just a matter of what we've seen, I think, with this Second Amendment sanctuary movement in Virginia and the hundreds of people that are turning out for these county supervisors meetings. I mean, it's amazing, the support there. So clearly gun owners, as you say, they're woke. They want to know what they can do. This is something that they can do locally. But if we, I think, are able to, hopefully start a new network of communications between these counties where we can be exchanging ideas and finding out, who are those natural leaders in these locations, then I think that we've got enough gun owners in the state who want to do something helpful to secure their rights, to prevent them from eroding. That I think that we can do that outreach. But, it's again, like with everything else that we're seeing here, it's going to happen at the grassroots level. It's probably going to be a little reactive. So it might take until the legislature really, kicks off. But we've got Gun Owner Lobby Day coming up January 20th. And Philip Van Cleve, head of the VCDL, told me, he said, normally we get about 800 people out there. If every one of these individuals who has shown up at their county supervisors meeting can make the drive to Richmond, we'll have well over 8,000 gun owners there for Lobby Day. And that's what we need. That's what legislators need to see when they start debating these gun control bills.
No doubt. And you've got one of the best, most active groups in Virginia Citizens Defense League in the country. They've been a model for groups around the nation, including Georgia Carry down here. They're one of the oldest and best in the nation. And if anybody knows how to lobby across the state, it's Phil Van Cleve and VCDL. We all know that. I love the movement that's happening in Virginia. I think that's something that we're going to see on a broader scope. If you begin to see, I believe Trump is going to steamroll. I believe landslide coming in 2020 as far as I'm concerned. But if something different were to happen, what we're seeing in Virginia is what we're going to see as a model across the country if we happen to lose. That's why we can't lose. That's why we have to look at Virginia and say, hey, we can't let this happen nationwide. A better group of gun owners in the state, grassroots, you're not going to find than you got right there in Virginia. No doubt. If anybody's capable, it's Virginia residents.
I think you're right. And to that end, I think I even said at Bearing Arms this week that we're seeing sort of, two reasons for counties adopting or communities adopting these resolutions. One is proactive. In Texas, I think we now are up to 14 or 15 counties. Florida has started passing Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. And there's no immediate danger in those states, but it's a warning to politicians. Hey, we're watching, and this is what you can expect if you decide to move in this direction. And then we have what happens in Virginia, what happened last year in New Mexico, and where this all started, really, in Illinois, Washington State as well, where it's more reactive, right? It's a response to these gun control laws that are getting introduced. I think both of those reasons are valid. I don't think there's any reason why you have to wait to pass a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution where you live. But you're right. If we do see that threat at the federal level, the hundreds of Second Amendment sanctuary communities that we have in place right now, those are going to become thousands around the country very quickly.
Well, look at proactive stuff. We didn't think we'd see the shift in Virginia as fast as we saw it. I mean, was it a fast shift. Yeah, it did. Virginia seemingly shifted rather quick. It didn't happen overnight. It took a number of years for that to occur, but in political speak, it happened very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with those Texas counties doing that. Texas is seeing a demographic shift right now. I've spent a lot of time working out in Arizona. Kurt Schilling and I were out there for a number of deals with a candidate in particular running in the Arizona 2nd District for Congress, Brandon Martin. We were down there on the border with Sheriff Mark Daniels. We've seen this stuff firsthand. We're watching that shift now. You got the Californication of Arizona coming. It's happening. Arizona, of all places, could possibly flip blue. So to declare these counties sanctuary cities in advance of that is just smart business as far as I'm concerned. Let's not wait and see what happened in Virginia seemingly overnight happen in your state, wherever you're at. If you're a member of your organization, get out and spread this word today. There's nothing stopping you from working on it today. Just because you're a red state doesn't mean you don't need to declare your county or talk to your commission about declaring yourself a Second Amendment sanctuary. Head this off at the pass and do it quickly, right?
Absolutely. Hey, Mark, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on the program. This has been absolutely fantastic. Will you come back at some point soon?
Oh, yes, and I'm going to ask you on your own show that you're coming on my program, right? You're going to do that, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Of course.
We sync up now, brother. Our schedules work now.
I know. I love it. So, yes, anytime you want me, happy to be there, and happy Thanksgiving to you. Just give folks a reminder, where can they listen to Armed American Radio?
Just visit armedamericanradio.com, and you'll find everything you need to know about the show, and you can visit us at AAR Mark on Twitter or Facebook.com/AAR Mark, but everything is at armedamericanradio.com, Cam. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and Mrs. E and everybody else, the whole family.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon. All right. I promise on Monday we'll have another armed citizen story, another recidivist report, another good deed of the day. But I just wanted to take the last minute or so here on today's Bearing Arms Cam and Company to say thanks to you for being a part of this program, for tuning in each and every day, for spreading the word about the latest Second Amendment news and information. You can subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, townhall.com's podcast page. You can subscribe to Town Hall Media on YouTube as well. But really, thank you not only for watching the program, but thank you for sharing the stories at Bearing Arms. I have a great deal to be thankful for. And those of you who keep me company and are a part of the company here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company, I am certainly thankful and very grateful for your support, for your friendship. Hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. We will be back with you with another program on Monday. Until then, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.